In 2005, we already had the first elections in internet. So in Estonia, the only country in the world where you can vote all election types, parliamentary, local, European, over your mobile phones or over your computers. By that time, in 2005, you already had a paperless government, which meant that government is not allowed to send papers between departments. By 2005, already a digital signature was compulsory and widely used, meaning that every citizen has a right to access basically any service, any public service over internet, except three. When you're born, somebody needs to see you. When you get married, somebody needs to see you. And when you die, somebody needs to make sure you're dead. Well, in every other case, by the law, every citizen has a right to using digital signature to get everything done. That was already in 2005. But then new services have been coming along. So of course now it's much more developed than it was 13 years ago.
So let's go back to 2005 when they had internet voting. Did anyone note if there was a difference in the percentage of population that voted when you switched over to internet voting versus the old method of going to the polls?
Well, I think first you have to understand e-voting as part of a bigger system. My own background, actually, my education is in political science. So, you know, this could be a next 1 hour discussion on the theory of how e-voting changes or doesn't change the results. And whether it is, for example, more beneficial for young people. Does it support the young people's engagement in election process or not? Which it did in the beginning, but at the moment, for example, after 13 years of experience, we see that actually percentage of old people or older generation is voting more actively online than young people. So, and then there's a million other questions there. For example, you know, Estonia, it is, we are very close to Santa Claus. It's close to North Pole. We are, this is a celebratory week for Estonians. We are about to celebrate this week the 100 years of independence. And in 2 days, it's promised minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. But you know, it's basically Estonia only experiences 2 types of weather throughout the year. It's a good skiing weather and a bad skiing weather. No other type of weather. Now that means that the elections which taking place in the early spring and late in the autumn can, especially in the regions, can be influenced very much by the weather, heavy snowstorms, storms, etc. So actually, you know, without e-voting, you could say that people living in cities have much better chance to go voting than, for example, people living in the rural areas. So that is something that the digital voting takes care of. So you see, there's lots of discussions about this. Of course, back in 2005, the first elections, around 3% or 4% of people voted online. At the moment, the last elections were in last October, and 33% of population voted online. So you know, it's growing with every elections. It's very comfortable, convenient. You can do it from wherever, you know, whichever. I voted from Malaysia, I voted from Qatar, I vote, you know, wherever you are at that day, or actually it's not a day, it's always a week or 2 weeks period where you can vote. So wherever you happen to be, you vote. It takes you 1 minute and a half, and you've done. And what I like about, for example, we started with voting. What I like about this voting is that people often ask me, especially now with, talking to you from US and the, Russian meddling in elections, Russia is just here, next to us. And Estonia, I don't know how much you know about Estonia at all, but Estonia was the first country ever being attacked, cyber attacked, as a country, by a country, from a country attack to another country, which was a Russian attack on Estonia in 2007. There was a political tension, removal of old Soviet monuments, riots, and then a serious attack which took down much of our system at that time, which only makes our system stronger. We have many of these services use blockchain technology, for example, our health data and other related data. But it's always the question, kind of two questions about whether voting elections, whether they are safe or not. One is technological. So you either trust the system or you don't trust the system. We in Estonia, we trust the system. We think that even though we are attacked, we are always one step ahead. So it kind of, we learn from each attack and then we are stronger. I'm ready to discuss later the big problem we had in Europe with a chip that we use. One of the biggest chip producers found out there was a mistake, and millions and millions of chips were closed down in Europe. Estonia is just a small bit of this, but our system, our ID cards were based on that particular faulty chip. So which basically allowed, in theory, corruption, corrupted election system. So there was a big question before the elections this year, which went on still, which the government very quickly reacted. And the certificates on those chips were changed very quickly. It was a national priority, and which made it safer later. But still, it is a question. And the second kind of a problem with digital voting is always a human aspect. Voting is by constitutions in democracies designed to be, a solitary process that you do alone without any interruption. And, you could think of this system that, when everybody can vote from wherever, I can be your boss and bring a computer in front of you, make a line of you, and you say, one by one in front of me, you vote or you're fired. I could do that in theory, or I could go to each of your door and give you $10 and say you vote whatever, the way I like. So you never can control this buying votes, etc. And how, and also often people ask me, how do you solve that type of human aspect of this problem? And here I think the solution is brilliant, because it's so simple. In Estonia you can vote over the course of 1 week and or even more. And you can vote as many times as you like. And every new voting cancels the previous one. So you can, if you like, if that's your hobby, you can vote 100 times, 1,000 times. So you can make a business out of this. You can just buy, take money from anyone. And then by the end of the day, you still are alone and vote wherever you want. So there's no way people can control your vote. But you could then say, but what about, if that's the only computer and, somebody says, you have to vote and I don't have a computer access anymore. What about then? Well, then if you go to if you feel that your integrity was under threat, then basically you can go to the regular office, voting booth, put your paper ballot, and that cancels all your previous e-votes. So again, these kind of systems, which in this very complex technological system are simply human behavioral kind of aspects. I think that's the simplicity and brilliance of that system. But that's just a very small element of the entire e-government that we were supposed to talk about today.
Well, it's a brilliant solution though, allowing you to just vote multiple times, so you can just allow yourself to get bribed for a full week or two, and then vote
yes.
the way you want.
When this system was originally introduced, then actually the government had to call to some older people, older generation, to remind them that you know, they saw from the logs that somebody have been like voting for, you know, 100 or 200 or 300 times, and to remind them that voting 300 times doesn't give that candidate 300 votes. So, you know, it took some time, but yes, that's the way it works.
So they were either voting 300 times, or their cat just like kept hitting
Exactly. Exactly.
Excellent. It's a brilliant solution. And before we move into subjects away from voting, does anyone have any questions for Ragnar before we move to the next topic? Sergio, go ahead.
Hi, Ragnar. So just quick question. Can you kind of take us through like more of the specifics of how the vote is actually cast? Is there a biometric piece? You mentioned something about the chip on the card. And then, you know, like some of the problems we have here in the United States are, you know, people are deceased, but people are still using, you know, their information to vote. And I understand, you know, your system doesn't allow for, like, say, the double voting in multiple multiple districts that people kind of abuse here. But how did Estonia kind of address that? Like, is there a biometric piece? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, on the specifics?
So before you answer that, Ragnar, just in general for everyone, Ragnar's going to talk about blockchain from his perspective, but it's not a technical talk. So he'll respond to the question, but asking super specific programming stuff isn't going to be the topic today.
The reason why I asked that is because you had mentioned you had voted from overseas, so I just kind of want to understand that process, how that works, and how they verify that it's actually you.
Yeah. So, well, maybe firstly, I will answer this, but maybe very, very quickly. Maybe I say a few words about myself as well, just very quickly. So I am from Estonia. Probably many of you have never heard that. The most often question what I hear when I travel around the world and I say I'm from Estonia, the first question people ask me is, what is it? And I'm used to this. It's a very small country, by the way. It's here in the north. We are neighbors Finland, Sweden, Russia, and Latvia, and we are 1.3 million people. I think that's very important to remember. 1.3 million people. So it's like a right side of the main street in New York, but just the right side. My own background is in political science. I worked then in 10 years in the ministry. So I was a state secretary for the arts. So I worked in culture and creative industries. That's my background. Then I worked as a consultant. I'm still working international consultant, advising governments around the world mostly in business development, startup sector, and culture creative industries. So that's my field of interest. Now, when just very quickly to talk about, you know, how did we get as Estonia to that position? You know, as a very small country, and lacking of any natural resources, seriously, it is, and also very important, we are very small, 1.3 million people, but we are very big in terms of our population. We are very big in terms of our territory. It is bigger country than Netherlands, and Netherlands has 16 million people. We have 1.3. So it's basically a very empty country. We are dispersed everywhere, which means that we have lots of little towns and townlets of 1,000, 2,000 people. Now, that means, and that's actually where this e-government originates from. Not out of, you know, we are innovative and we like technology, but from two very important aspects. Firstly, we will never, ever be able to cover entire country with regular services, even with bank offices, post offices, government offices. It's impossible. It's so small, but it's so dispersed everywhere around the territory. And secondly, we were poor as hell. 1991, we after revolution, we got back our independence from Soviet Union, and we were bankrupt. So without these natural resources, how can you, with very, very little manpower, a very small internal market, but at the same time, almost collapsed economy, what can you do? So I think this kind of a mindset of trying out, testing out, being very courageous with our reforms, also in terms of economic reforms, it's very much kind of the inspired by these conditions. Probably, I mean, even though you might not know much about Estonia, you might know some things that come out from here. For example, the most famous invention from Estonia is only actually 4 of my own schoolmates is Skype. So hopefully use this. Now there's few other big unicorns. One that is from Estonia is TransferWise. Maybe some of you have used money transfers through TransferWise. That's Estonian. For tech industry, it's CrabCAD, which is very well known, and many others. Estonia has the most startups per capita in the world, while Tel Aviv has the most startups per capita in any city in the world. Estonia has the most startups per capita here, so it's often called as a Silicon Valley of Europe. Now, when this information came out, I remember it was a few years ago, I think in New York, in the Wall Street Journal, if I'm not mistaken, there was an article. So quickly a journalist came here to kind of find out, like, I've never heard of this country and all these kind of inventions and statistics, I want to learn what happens, why, what happened. And then basically, the article said that there's 3 reasons for such a focus on IT. The first, according to him, was the weather. He said if you have to live in such a crappy weather yourself, you would do nothing else but just stay in and program all the time. The second thing they said was so-called Skype effect. And this is really something that I feel myself, and I feel from many people. No, Skype effect is not kind of a spillover effect from, Skype being, well, it's not so successful anymore, but, over the years that it was so successful, and many engineers from Skype kind of creating spin-offs. Well, there was a bit of that, but in reality, what the Skype effect actually is about mindset. Estonian, when I work with many other people from many other countries, they have this kind of a inferiority feeling that, oh, we are so small country, only 10 million people, only 20 million people, we can't be anything, we have to travel away. Then Estonians don't have that feeling. We are like a village, and then like thinking that everybody can make a next Skype. So this kind of looking at your world, the market as the world, not your own home market. And then the third thing, which is very much connected to what we talk about, it's a skill development, it's the infrastructure, it's the connectivity, etc. Now I get closer to Sergio's question. To understand how, again, I'm not a technological person, so I can't give you all the details about how exactly does it work. But to go back to the very beginning, I think there's few principles that make up the DNA of Estonian e-government, which is considered often as the most advanced digital government system in the world. Well, firstly, it's so small, so it is easy for us to be a test lab. It's easy to, for us, we never understand, for example, US, like you have all the technical readiness, what stops you to, be much, further ahead. But then, 300 plus million people compared to one, we can try out everything. Secondly, what is important is the law. There's a principle in Estonia, which is very much linking these technological changes to economic effectiveness. There's a law which basically says that a government is allowed to ask any piece of information from its citizens only once. And that's very, very important. So in any of your countries or anywhere in the world where, different government institutions or departments ask you the same kind of information, and every time you apply for something, you have to submit the same kind of information and same kind of confirmation over and over and over again, not in this country. It's not even allowed. So once the piece of information is in the system, then it's there, and no other government office is allowed to ask me the same information again. It is their obligation to find that information from that system. So that even up to the point that we do not carry driving licenses in this country, because of course, the government gives me the license. Why should I show the government the license that they've given to me? So of course, every police car has a computer, and they automatically see whether the driver has the license, whether the car has insurance, whether the car has a technical checkup, and I don't have to carry any of that with me. Doctors, why on earth do I still have to go to a doctor? So the doctor would give me a written prescription, and then I take this piece of paper, and then why? I mean, the doctor has a computer, and the pharmacy has a computer. So I mean, that doesn't make sense. And of course, if I'm a regular patient and I need a drug that I use often, so why do I even have to go anywhere? So I just call my doctor and say, I need a new prescription, and I can do this while I'm waiting in the line and queue in the pharmacy, and it takes, it's instant. So I get that immediately. Sometimes it can be difficult as well. So when I'm driving from the one town to another, and then there's these traffic speed cameras, then by the time I get home, I already have the bill, the receipt in my email box. So sometimes it's difficult. If I don't have children yet, but vast majority of the parents and students as well, but parents, they are in contact with the school and the teacher through e-school system, which means that all the progress, all the home assignments, everything, all the information that is connected with the child is in that system, and it can be seen both by the parents, by the student, and by the school. So which is a channel between the parents and the school. Now, of course, not many kids might agree that it's so fun that if you miss one class, then your parents get an SMS saying, your child is not in classroom, or things like that, or you're failing grades. So, I see often in the films how American children are scared of showing the notice to the parents. So there is no such a thing in this country. So these are the very, very important things. Also, in Estonia, the economic impact has been calculated, and while this is a very difficult thing to do, we know that we win entire Estonia wins 800 years worth of working days combined every year. So every year there's 800 years of working days combined, won by using this system. Only by using digital signatures, only by the fact that we are allowed to give digital signatures, each citizen wins on average 5 days, working days of pure time, which is money. It is calculated that it is 2% of the GDP. which we win just by using the system. Now, Estonia is one of only 5 countries that contributes to NATO 2% rule, as President Trump wants. Now, we often say as a joke or as a metaphor that basically our e-government system is our security policy, because of that we have no problem covering for the defense. So in the very core of our system is something that we called, again, I now go closer to the technological side of things, but I hope I'm not too mistaken here. The backbone of our system is called X-Road. And basically that means that the Estonian system is not built upon a centralized database. It's not that everything, so in Estonia, 99% of public services are online. 99% of services that the government gives to the public are online. And it's not one big, massive database or system where you have to approach. There's actually many different systems. And the X-Road, as I said, this backbone is basically a system which connects all those individual systems. Systems like the tax system, the e-health, the education system, the voting system. So they are individual, and some of them are built upon the blockchain technology, like the e-system. So our health records, they are not in one system. They are distributed through many users. Now that means that, well, it's more autonomous. It protects the system against one centralized attack, but at the same time the X-Road is this kind of a backbone which allows the sharing of that data from different individual databases. So that is why one ministry to another, or police to with a school or a hospital with private, telecom provider can share that information seamlessly. It's all based originally on this. So every Estonian has got an ID card, and unlike many, and the reason why Estonia, compared to many of its more developed neighbors, have been able to proceed so much quicker was, unlike in many other countries, unlike in Nordic countries, or unlike the big problem in UK, where the governments are unable or politically impossible to make ID cards compulsory because of, I don't know, big brother society watching you or whatever the reason. In Estonia, this is compulsory. So every citizen has to have ID card with a chip. And basically that's our digital signature. This comes with 2 PIN codes and the PUK code, so basically like your mobile phone, and that's the system. Now you then put it in the e-card reader, and you can sign digitally. You can access all these databases that you need. There's also the centralized e-government kind of a portal, which is called Estonia EE, so eesti.ee, where you can access any service possible. Now, of course, I don't use this card for the chip, because, I have Mac computer here. I don't even have, the USB port anymore. So what do I do with this? So that's why, of course, we use, or a lot of people use instead the mobile ID. So mobile ID is basically the chip, which is here in the card in the format of your SIM card. So it's the same kind of thing. I I have two PIN codes here, so I can add. I mean, I can access any public service. I can access any private service. I can access e-banking with this. So I just go whether here or in my computer to the I don't know, bank website. I put my my code there, and then I get a notice here, little a notification that enter your PIN 1, and then I enter my PIN 1, and then I'm in. And then when I'm making the transaction, or when I'm confirming my vote for the candidate in the internet, I enter the PIN 2, which is to confirm, and that's it. So it's basically like my little PIN calculator or entry device at the same time. Now the next step is another private service that we. I mean, it's all government here works very closely with private service, but privately developed service which is called Smart ID, and Smart ID is also here in the in my mobile phone. But unlike mobile ID, which is a physical thing connected with a SIM card, mobile ID, this Smart ID is actually not connected with any SIM card. So it is. I have once authorized myself either through bank, through police, or as long as I have SIM card opportunity through my SIM card based ID card. But that's it. And then it's only. So, for example, then I can use this even if my SIM card is taken away, only through wireless. So these are the kind of tools we use. Everyone uses. The rate of use of some of those services are incredible. I mean, incredible. In Estonia, the 98% of all taxes are filed using e-services, 98%. At the moment, just 2 days ago, the tax office opened this year's the tax, the last year's tax report, and because everything in Estonia is online, so all my tax reports, everything has been already pre-filled. So I enter the system. I already see everything. So if I've received some money from someone, cash, which doesn't happen in 95% of the cases. So if I have not received anything else, everything is already pre-filled in the system. I just glance it over. I press yes button. I enter my PIN code. It takes on average, well, people even compete. It's usually things people do on Facebook. They compete, but it usually takes me 2.5 to 3.5 minutes, and that's it. And my taxes are filed. I get the money back in. If I don't have any extras, if I don't need any special treatment, if I don't add something and somebody has to control. So like for 95% of people, I get my money back latest in 5 working days, 5 to 7 working days. It's there. If you are very quick, you can get it back. My record was 3 days. And that's it. Again, if you are opening your company, this is the easiest country to do this. Opening your company takes you on average 12 to 15 minutes. Everything is online, everything template based. Again, if you want specific, if it's difficult company with some, you want to play with the statutes and stuff, of course, then you need maybe to get more time. But if you're happy with kind of fill in the blanks format, you don't, in this country, you don't need any capital in cash to fund your company. So it's basically the most time consuming part of establishing a company in Estonia is agreeing on the name, a creative process. Everything else takes you 12 minutes, and then you can get your bank account online, and then you can basically start giving out invoices in 20 minutes, no time. So again, I can continue. There's a lot of these examples that you can do. And the most important part at the moment is that from 2014, Estonia took up the next ambition. As I said, Estonia is very small, only 1.3 million people. So if we can't become big in terms of Estonians, why not to become big in e-Estonians? So from 2014, I don't know if you've heard of this, but if not, I really recommend you to Google after this webinar more. Estonia started its groundbreaking program of e-Residency. So Estonia is actually giving out so every one of you can get this card from wherever in the world. You need only once to identify yourself at the embassy. So you need to get, somebody needs to make sure that this is you. And once this is done and you get this, you pay, I don't know, 50 or 100 euros. Then basically all Estonian systems are open to you as they are for me. Of course, you can't vote for it in elections because you're not a citizen. It doesn't give you any residency rights physically. But if you want, and Estonia is a part of the European Union, so if you want to open a European Union company, if you want to register all your file all your taxes, open bank accounts, give reports, apply for anything in European Union, then that's basically your tool. And forget about real signatures, notary, sending papers with snail mail or whatever. So there's already. I think I don't know the very last data, but the last time I saw was around, if I'm not mistaken, around 20,000 e-residents already from 140 different countries. These 20,000 e-residents in 1 year only have already established 1,500 new companies in Estonia. And they have already paid around 5 million euros in taxes to Estonia. So this is a way where you can think big, even if you're very small. So now I did a long monologue, but I'm happy to answer these questions. I hope, Sergio, that I explained a bit of how it physically looks like, how you do. And by the way, you asked Michael before about the e-government. When I was the Undersecretary of State, then, in the old times, when you left the country, so you had a trip, then what happened was that you had to release yourself from your duties. Somebody else was an acting, secretary or whatever was appointed, and you basically were not allowed to sign anything. Nowadays, it's yesterday, because wherever I am in the world, I still sign. I can sign I signed my documents. I gave approvals to the invoices in the ministry, and documents and memorandums, etc. So again, your physical being kind of loses its importance because you are connected all the time from everywhere.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roger. And Rebecca, you have a question? That's Rebecca's cat.
Sorry, she muted me too. Anyway, so it sounds like Estonia is really forward-thinking, but what were the biggest challenges you had from a political standpoint in switching over to blockchain to manage all of these records?
Again, well, the security is a problem, of course. It takes a lot of. I mean, that the hackers community is very powerful, and we are very small. So again, how to be always one step ahead of them, which means that we, from the very beginning, have been working together with the private sector. So we have some of the leading companies in the world, like Guardtime, who is provide, you know, you can Google this company, Guardtime, who is providing real-time security applications based on blockchain. So basically, you know, if you see a breach in the system, they you know, the system basically notifies you right away. We've seen companies working like one of the cornerstones of Estonian e-government is a company called Cybernetica, really a forerunner in many of these applications. So it's not a government hired, government-based companies. We hired as a government chief information officer one of the leading IT visionaries. Well, not a minister of IT, but basically a visionary and a kind of a thought leader in the government. Somebody who very edgy, somebody who basically shook the government out of that system. Estonia is in a very much in a front line in terms of, you know, Russia is here. Our relations with Russia they're extremely difficult over the past 25 years. We've been attacked, but at the same time, as I said, you don't kind of pull back because of those attacks, but you actually take it further. Estonia has also been able to really kind of consolidate its efforts around this topic. So, for example, because of our experience in cyber attacks, because of our experience in building up these IT systems, it is maybe not a surprise now for you that the NATO headquarters for cyber defense is here in Estonia, not very far from where I live. Estonia organizes in Estonia, they organize through that NATO headquarters, which has member countries from around the world, the largest global cyber security operations exercise called Locked Shields, with more than 900 members from more than 25 countries participating. I don't know if you heard that, but one of the corner documents, one of the key documents in the world of cyber security, it's called Tallinn Manual. Tallinn Manual. Tallinn is the capital of Estonia, and Tallinn Manual means basically that's the framework of international law around cyber security issues. Maybe it's not a surprise, you know, in European Union, there is a principle since the past 15 years after enlargement and the new member states came to the European Union, that new institutions, new headquarters, new agencies created in the European Union should be divided between member states. So again, it might not be now a surprise for you that the European Union headquarters for the IT agency is again here in Tallinn. So we really kind of mobilize our efforts and focus on our efforts on these issues because, and again, this is a testing ground. We take things further. For example, at the moment, we want to be also the one of the forerunners in terms of self-driving cars. Estonia was the first country in Europe which allowed self-driving cars on its streets. We were just the presidency of the European Union last half a year, and during the presidency there were self-driving buses going in the center of Tallinn. Again, it's a long, you know, it's still a long future, but again, we are ready to try out. We are ready to test. And often when people say that, you know, but what about all these risks? And what, you know, what if somebody steals your identity? And what if, you know, Russia meddles in your elections? And what if this system goes down? And what if, you know, electricity goes down and you build all your system relying, you know, on the digital? Then the answer to this from majority of Estonians would be very simple. they would say to you, if you, all of you around here on my screen, if you would have a chance to live one day as an e-Estonian, you simply would not like to go back. You simply would not care of these problems, of these theoretical threats, because the last time when I had to queue for a document, the last time I had to queue for any document or a certificate or anything for Estonian government was, it must have been more than 6 years ago. So, I mean, next time you need to stand somewhere in a line, think about that.
So at the end of this hour, we're all going to be Estonians. You sell time
e-Estonian. You can be e-Estonian. You can be Estonian. Go to e-Residency, Google e-Residency, and you can be e-Estonian, all of you.
I love it. I get 2 flags to wave. Beautiful. Tucker has a question. Tucker, you're up.
Actually, just a comment, guys. And I have to agree with you, Michael. This is like one of those riveting discussions I think I've listened to in decades. I want to pack my bags and just race to Estonia just so I can sit and witness it all. And I have to say, you know, it's like I almost feel like I'm sitting in on like a practice run for a presentation to the United Nations. That's just how compelling all of this is for us here. You don't know what you don't know. I feel terribly naive. What a way to spend a Tuesday afternoon at lunchtime listening to you enlighten all of this. And the irony isn't lost on me either. I mean, here we are listening to a government official from Estonia, a country with barely more than 1 million people, that is sufficiently remote and small in size that people don't even ask you where it is. They ask you what it is. What's in Estonia? They don't even know. And we're over here resurrecting fossil fuels. You know, we're learning to make fire again over here in the U.S., going completely backwards. You know, arguably the most powerful nation on earth, the most advanced nation on earth, arguably. And this is what we're preoccupied with, you know, extracting coal. And you guys are doing just absolutely extraordinary things. You know, it feels like a United Nations presentation. So thank you. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you for enlightening me. And for being so generous with your time. It's absolutely riveting. I love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you.
Can I comment, Tucker, before you pack your bags, let me remind you that tomorrow it's -15 Fahrenheit here. So think it twice over.
I'll bring a second suitcase, not to worry.
Yeah, but I forgot to mention something in relation to security and this main principle. One of the main principles, again, this is very, very important, is that you as a citizen are the owner of your data. So again, this is a cornerstone of this system. You own your data. In terms of health records, for example, again, every single doctor can, every single hospital, wherever you need to go, you don't ever have to be afraid of, whether they have the latest data on you. But then if everybody owns your data and, the police can enter this data and the doctor can enter your data, what if they are very, what's the English word? Snoopy or no, if they want to know about the famous person, how do you do this? And again, this is very, very important in Estonia, that in that central system that I mentioned, where you can see, when you can enter all national and private services, one of the most staggering service that I always like is a service where you can see exactly the log of using of your data. So you can at any given time see exactly who has entered your data. Now, if I apply for a passport, and then I would see next day that somebody from the passport agency has entered my data. Of course, they see only part of my data. They don't see my health data. Then that's okay. But if I would go today and I have not had any contact with the government in the past, year, And I enter my system and I see that the police officer and the migration officer and the doctor has seen my data, but there's no reason whatsoever, then they can be prosecuted. It has happened only twice. If there's a very, very big fine and you are fired immediately, so you really think twice. But if you send that data to a third person, so to a journalist, for example, you get prison. Now, this is very harsh. This has not happened. And you might ask, oh, so how many, is it 1,000 cases or, 100? No, I tell you, this is like maybe 3 or 4 cases in all that from 2000, early 2000s, where this is the case. So that kind of a security issue is again an issue. It's not a technological issue. It is a more of a human nature issue. And then because that is about the trust into systems. So, and often when people would tell me still, but listen, it's still easier for the doctor to, see, or somebody enter my medical record. And if there's something, embarrassing, then something that we always say, I don't know how much you follow that, but at least in Europe, we know the last time then a high profile case of stealing somebody's health record was when Michael Schumacher got into that accident, and his health records from that hospital were stolen and published. Now, that moment, Michael Schumacher was the most protected patient in the world, and this took place in Switzerland. These records were stolen on the paper. So there is no e-health record yet to be, stolen and shared. So again, to answer to Rebecca's kind of refer to what Rebecca said, it's absolutely there. The problems, we acknowledge this. But if you ask me, would I go back? If you outline, these theoretical threats to me, I would say you better live your life so you have nothing to hide than go back to the Stone Age.
So, Ragnar, you make an interesting point about the health records. We had an actress, you probably know her, Carrie Fisher from Star Wars. She was in a hospital in California, and I have a client called NavaHealth that has a relationship with the hospital that she was in. I think it was Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Anyhow, 40 people were fired because they stole her health data and sent it to the tabloids, and they got caught for what they did. So yeah, it's a real point. Kirtana, you're up with a question.
Sure. So I just wanted to ask a question on the citizen data. So the process of migrating all of that data over to the blockchain. So, and some of the challenges that come with it would be, if the data is not available, historical data, paper records, who keys it in, and how do you trust that process? So I just wanted to understand how that came about while this was being implemented.
Well, on some, we are a pretty young country after independence, after the second independence. So probably our records are not so long, but indeed there are problems. There are focus areas. For example, in health records, 95% of health records, the historical ones as well, has already been digitized. So it is important for the integrity of the system. I can't answer you the technical part of transferring the data over blockchain. This is already being very much part of the system architecture. So it's not again, there was never a central system registry and then you started to divide it, and no, it's been built up as such from the very beginning. At the moment, by the way, Estonia is open. Well, even with all that system and even with these individual registries that are connected then through the X road, this kind of the backbone, it's still possible that with a very strong foreign attack, your system integrity could be jeopardized. So to lower that risk, Michael, I think it's from your computer, this noise.
Yes, it's me.
Oh, that's super. I just shut down your professor. You see how easy it was. So to lower that risk, Estonia is at the moment completing creation of the very first in the world, the very first digital embassy. They are doing it in Luxembourg. So basically what it means is that we are duplicating entire data set in Luxembourg, because we think Luxembourg is far from Russia. It hasn't annoyed many other countries. And you know, now I say something that, you know, it's more of a theoretical game. Of course, we are celebrating our 100 years of from the first independence, and we're a proud country, etc. We hope that we will never ever be occupied again. But you know, our Ukrainian crisis is very, very close to us. The kind of a, if you again, political scientist in me is talking this kind of the cloud country principle, that for the first time ever, you know, as I said, a 1 million people country could become a 25 million people country. At the same time, a thought exercise that when Crimea was occupied by Russians, you know, you can occupy, we have been occupied many, many times in our history by Nazis, by communists, by, you know, many, many others. So you can occupy us, so you can occupy our territory, but you will never ever be able to occupy the intellectual property, the data about us, which makes country. And then you can, you know, of course, countries are defined by, you know, physical land as well. But, you know, if you take that out of the mental exercise, you could say that that's another layer of your country's security, that even by attacking our actual infrastructure here, you will never be able to take away from everything we created in terms of data, our records. So again, this is really exciting time for us as well. We are now really on a kind of a new, on a threshold of new development, and it's really exciting times for us as well. We see the approach to for example, for businesses, that's so important. That's from already in pilot phases, Estonian company, if, for example, again, this is a pilot at the moment, but if I have a company and if I pay you, for example, Adam, if I'm looking at you now on my screen. So if I pay you a salary, and I make a transfer, and I write that, you know, you get you know, $5,000 salary, then that's it. I don't do anything more. Automatically, the taxes are paid to the tax office automatically by the bank. Automatically, that transaction creates a report for the tax report. So again, forget about reporting your taxes, you know, forget having a bookkeeper. It's going to be just me making a transfer to you for your salary, and everything else is taken care of. So this kind of an automatic taxation system, which is then balanced, or which is then accompanied in Estonia with very, very simple tax system. Estonia has a flat tax system, so we don't have progressive taxes. Everybody pays the same. We have 0% of corporate income tax. So in Estonia, before you pay any money out as a dividend to your own account, you pay nothing. So you can reinvest any profit you get without any taxes. So it's really, really good place to be and to do business. And then these e-services, making it easy even from abroad, as this 1,500 new companies showing in just 1 year show. That is why we are doing it. It's not about being innovative for the sake of being innovative. It's not because we can be innovative. It's saving money, getting jobs and filling our state budget. So that's the way it is.
Okay, and we're a little bit over time, but we have one final question for you, Ragnar. Joe, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I just want to say that in Scranton, it's minus 15 degrees too, so that's not really much of a detriment for some people in the US to move to Estonia. So just want to bring that out.
Okay, so thank you for that. And a question for you, Ragnar. This will be my final one. Are there larger countries that are looking at you as kind of like the guinea pig or the lab mouse to see if they want to scale it? So my big question is this scalable to larger countries, and are larger countries looking at you to do that?
Yes, Estonia has been, Estonia has also put that, what I just told you, in front of the kind of a country branding, international positioning engine. So we do, we work across the world, of course, especially post-Soviet countries, but also we work a lot in Middle East. They are very, very interested there in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, in Qatar, in Oman, in Yemen, in other places, in Africa as well. In Europe, it is natural. We just had Digital Summit as the central point of our European Union presidency. Emmanuel Macron, Angela Merkel, Theresa May over here. So we are kind of the agenda. We set or at least we are very, very close in setting the agenda. By the way, in Davos, when Angela Merkel made her speech, in her speech, she referred to only one country by name, and that was Estonia, by saying that Germany is far behind Estonia in terms of digital society. Our former president, Thomas Henrik Ilves, who became really a global spokesperson for IT developments, but mostly about cybersecurity, is now working, living in US and working for Stanford. Our former prime minister of 10 years, who is very much in the heart of building that system as well, is currently the vice president of the European Commission, and he's responsible in the European Union for the digital society. Again, so you see that when I said that the key critical institutions in Europe or NATO globally are in Estonia, also the Estonians, the key Estonians, are already in those places. So yes, absolutely, we are advising many governments around the world, and again, this is a really good place to test. At the moment, what we are fighting for very much in Europe, our agenda is, and we quite successfully doing this, is that we are super annoyed by the fact that we can't use the same kind of services everywhere in Europe. And so at the moment, what Europe has done already, the big thing was that European Union has agreed already that every European country has to acknowledge the digital signatures given in other countries. There is 5 countries in Europe at the moment which have similar service. Of course, they're not as developed, but they have digital signatures which are interoperable. So in Estonia, Finland, Belgium, Lithuania, and Portugal. And for example, they can already use the Estonian systems as well, the same as e-residents would. So they don't have to be e-residents. We are now developing cross-border data exchange. So we have already piloted with Finland. I don't know, again, maybe you don't know, Estonia is very close to Finland. Not only that we are neighbors, but we are unique in terms of we are Finno-Ugric people. So we are not related to any Indo-European, so we speak language which is not related to English or any other language in the world, or German or Russian or whatever. We also speak very similar language. We have the same anthem to countries, so we are we are brothers as countries. So and they're just half an hour away is Helsinki from Tallinn. It's like economically it's one area. Therefore, it's very important. There's 50,000 Estonians working every day in Helsinki, which means that it's very important for us that these services can be introduced used between the governments. So this has already happened. Finland took over the Estonian X-Road system. So now they are developing their individual systems, the databases, which then can be linked to the e-system. Already now, the Finnish person coming over a day trip to Tallinn can buy a prescription drug from Estonian pharmacy based on the prescription given by the Finnish doctor. So these kind of things already happen, but again, this is just a pilot phase and this needs to go further.
Great. Well, Ragnar, thank you so much for all your insights and information. We learned a ton, more than I bargained for. So I would say, yeah, you're fine on the technical end. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm encouraged to become an Estonian digitally. So thank you again for your time. Everyone who popped in today, thank you so much. I will see you in class tomorrow night. And Ragnar, I'll send you a tape of this recording as well, okay?
Take care, and it was nice to see all of you.
Thank you, and stay warm.
I will. I have lit all the candles, and I'm sitting next to the fireplace. So I'm now gonna, put the fire and get warm. And I have a good cognac from Armenia, a 60-year-old cognac.
Very nice. Well,
sorry.
For me.
But you, Michael, now you have to cut that part from the YouTube video. But everything else is.
We'll censor that. No worries. Bye, Ragnar.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.